My name's Matt, and I will be talking with Jason Wilcox about product leadership roles and best practices for managing remote teams. I wanted to ask you the first question, and this is based on my research. So what I really notice when I'm talking with the engineering leaders or tech leaders in Europe versus US, right, on the LinkedIn profile, I see like a clear message on LinkedIn and your too, that you write a lot of numbers. For instance, like cost reduction, budget owned, improvement, and everything is in numbers. So I really appreciate it, but it always like caught my interest. Like how do you do it and what do you do? So like a long introduction, but the first question I wanted to ask you, because I saw pretty impressive results regarding cutting the costs over time, like in a different organizations on the engineering side. And this year, it's a lot about optimization focus. Last year was a lot about cutting the costs. But maybe you could give some advices to other leaders, engineering leaders, where to look for the cost cutting and how to optimize the structure.
Yeah. So, my approach, it's probably a little bit different than a lot of engineering or technology leaders. I think as most people come up through technology, they think about costs around personnel. They think about costs of hosting and integrations with vendors and some of these items. And it's true, right? These are all costs. They're all items that really have to be accounted for. I think where I find some of my success, though, is it comes a little bit from my background in managed services and dealing a lot with contracts. That's an area that I find a lot of technical leaders gloss over, is the fine print in contracts, negotiating out costs, understanding that even after you've engaged with the vendor wants to work with you. And so, if you're in a downturn, right, in your industry, or you're growing and you're seeing your economies of scale get out of whack because you didn't think about that growth, I think in those situations, someone who is comfortable working with contracts, really digging into them and working with the vendors, can find a lot of success, especially because it's just not a skill that you find traditionally around small and medium business, C-suite, and technical leaders. You really have to go up that, up the board, right? Some of these much larger conversations. And then those technical leaders are very good at it. But in that small business and medium business space, you can find a lot of headroom if you're really good at managing those contracts and really constraining and putting guardrails around them.
Okay, thanks for that, Jason. And another thing I wanted to ask you, because you work on different positions as a director of engineering, head of engineering, CTO, and various organizations, couple hundred people. So that's already some kind of like a good scale. And I'm just wondering, what is your approach to having like the team structure around you? So who is usually your partner in crime? How do you structurize it?
Yeah, on the engineering side, typically my partners in crime are the product owners, product managers. They, a really good product owner or product manager can make or break a CTO or a head of engineering. I think I'm seeing an evolution of this position. It's the CTPO, so I assume it's a combination of a technical leader and product owner. That would be really hard, right? I think when you're 5 or 10 people, right, and you're a CTO because you've got a business card that says CTO, it's your first time doing it, and you're maybe building a SaaS application or something like that. It's very easy to work within that product, but as things scale, the demands of time on the CTO and where you're living and working really mean that you need strong partners, right, as you've indicated. And for me, the product owners, the product managers, that's really that sweet spot for me. Because if I have a good product owner, if I have a good product manager, it takes a huge amount of stress off of the product management side. And I've got someone who can really track down information about the product, who can work with customers, who can provide really good information that then I and the engineering team can take and build. And if you don't have that, you end up going through iteration after iteration. And honestly, as companies scale, there's in the startup world, there's that idea of build fast, right, and break things. And that you can only do that for so long. But if you have someone good in product, you can really much earlier get into a better iteration of the product without breaking a bunch of things or doing work that ends up getting thrown away.
But you mentioned an interesting concept of the CTPO. Yesterday, I was recording one episode with a leader from Sweden, from one of the fintechs there, and we were talking about it that usually in a company you have a sales team and marketing team, and to get them on the same page without like a lot of hassle and fights, it's really difficult. Yeah, so we were discussing that the product and engineering is a bit of kind of a similar constellation, right? So you need a really good leader or leaders on a CPO or CPO or CTPO to kind of like connect those two bodies. Like, have you experienced that?
Yeah, well, I've not experienced the joint role. For me, I do think there are really good CTOs and technical leaders out there. There are really good product leaders out there. I've only come across a few people who I would consider, even if their title didn't say so, were really good technology and product leaders. And it's what I find, and again, my experiences with private equity, VC, small, medium business, and in those worlds, I've not come across a CTO who is visionary the way like a CEO or CPO is. Typically in a smaller company, the CEO is serving as that CPO role, and there's good synergy there. And on the cross section, I've really never come across someone who's in a CPO or CEO role, unless they're a CEO, but they're an engineering background or something like that, where they can translate the technical well. There's just so much to do across those two pieces that I think, one, it's bandwidth and time, and two, it's a very rare skill set to be able to handle both of those well. I think most of what you're going to find is someone who does one side really well and does the other side average.
Makes sense. And how about the team setup, right? Remote, hybrid, on-site. I'm just wondering, what is your approach, and do you see some kind of trends like this year? Because you are really close to Silicon Valley, so maybe you see some kind of concept that are evolving there, and what is acceptable, what people prefer. How do you see it?
I've run teams in all capacities. I've run, in-house teams that are on site, they're in the office. I've run onshore hybrid teams. I've run completely offshore remote teams, onshore remote teams, all that good stuff. I do like the in-office aspect. I think that there is a collaborative nature that can get lost a little bit when you're not working that. But the fact of the matter is the trend and the adoption is people want to travel. They want to do different things. And honestly, if you have hired and trained up the right talent, then it's not really a problem. If you're bad at hiring, well, you're going to find the remote working aspect very difficult, right? Because remote management, remote leadership is more difficult than in-house leadership. So if you're struggling with leadership or management already, you're not hiring the right people, it's a recipe for disaster. But if you're good at hiring, if you're hiring the right people, then the letting them be remote within reason can work out pretty well. I think where people falter is if they're remote and then they're trying to allow people to work whatever the local hours are. There has to be a little bit of give and take. Right now the team that I run is I have people in the US, Canada, Europe, Thailand, India, Pakistan, but we have a core set of hours where everybody knows that they're on, and that that allows people to collaborate, right? So you have a certain people that they're on for a bunch of hours and then they overlap with other people who start their day. But it works really well. And like I said, I think when you bring on the right people, you can have very good success there. And that's the trend, right? Remote's not going away. I've got a developer, like you said, in Thailand. He loves living there. He moved there. He goes out on the weekends. He goes out during the day. And people want to do these things. And so if you have the right processes in place, it's a good situation. I do miss the in-office a little bit sometimes, but, the remote is a good situation. It is what it is.
And for how long are you remote?
I've been now remote since essentially the COVID 2020. When COVID hit, it's funny. I was actually on vacation. I was on a photography trip in California. And so I didn't really realize what all was going on. And I got back into cell service, and my IT manager at the time gave me a call. He said, "Hey, the company's going remote." I said, "Okay, well, we've been working on this. We had a proof of concept. What's the time frame?" 1 week. Oh, okay, 1 week. All right. Well, that's a little different. And so most of that team, we set remote. That was a company of about 300 people. And then since then, I've had the opportunity to be in the office a little bit, but for the most part, I've been remote day in, day out. And like you said, there's pros and cons.
And I'm looking always for some contrarian approaches or the practices. And when we last talked, you had like a few good examples that I think you could share today. I'm looking for something that works for you from the, engineering leadership perspective or team building, but it's not maybe so common, on the market, or not many people are talking about widely.
So, I remember that was a fun chat. We went through a few different things. I think the biggest one for me that I think about is it goes back to that idea of build fast and break things. I think Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook coined the term, and startups especially have really glommed onto that. And I think larger companies, smaller departments within those companies have glommed onto that. And it's not that there's not a place for that ideology, but I think it's right at the beginning, right? If you're a couple founders and you're trying to vet out an idea, I think that ideology makes sense. But I've worked with companies that, they consider themselves a startup, but they were a startup, 5, 10, 15 years ago. They're not a startup anymore. They have hundreds of people, and they still have that mentality. When I work with those companies, either directly or in consulting roles, what I find is that the break fast, or the go fast and break things philosophy ends up in a lot of work that gets thrown away and a lot of repetitive work, because you just get to a point where there has to be communication, collaboration amongst the teams, especially if you have different teams working on different parts of the same product. And I've watched insane stuff where, Department A builds a feature that Department B had already built, and they spent months building it because no one asked if it existed. And I've been blown away. And I just sit there and I watch. I'm like, man, a single 30-minute conversation would have saved 8 developers 3 months worth of work. And I see that a lot. And so, I'm a big proponent of slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And when I measure velocity, which I think a lot of engineering departments don't do, maybe they say that they do, but it doesn't happen as much as they do, as they think. But when you actually measure velocity, you can get to a really, really good velocity with the idea of, hey, we're going to have good spec documents. We're going to have good sprint planning. We're going to make sure that people feel really comfortable with the work that we're going to do. We've vetted out the thing that we're building for whoever the end user is. And then from there, you're not going back and you're not iterating a ton on the feature. You're not building features that you've already built. You're not building features that then get sunsetted a month later. But if you've gotten to a little bit of size, especially if you're more than one team that's working on a product, that go fast and break things. I think people think it works well, but the metrics that I've seen just don't hold out. So sorry, everybody.
And talking about some lessons learned, I feel like each year I have this aha moment, right? Like I figured out something and it changed my mind completely. And it could be like a small thing. And I'm just wondering, what was your latest aha moment?
Oh, my latest aha moment.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I will say that I started out, purely in technical tactical. I'm an engineer by trade. I never really thought that I'd be in a leadership capacity. I never thought that that would be the pathway that I would take. So I know coming into this, my biggest aha moment was, working in my first leadership role and just realizing, man, there's an entire skill set of things that I don't know how to do. That's probably where most of my aha moments come from, are skills that I never thought I'd have to develop or enhance, that, I have to. And a lot of the time it's soft skill sets. I think my biggest, it's kind of an aha moment, I guess, but for me, now that I have multiple people, multiple leaders under me, right? So I'm a manager of people and a manager of managers. It's remembering when I had the aha moment for my managers who are having the aha moment, right? So it's situations where, you're talking to someone and they're saying something around like, oh yeah, I'm working with this person and trying to build up this skill set, or hey, I'm gonna switch this person over to this because they don't handle this situation very well. And I remember, I asked a question like, oh, okay, well, when you talk to them about that, like, what did they feel like their struggle was? And, it's the conversation, well, I never talked to them about it. Oh, well, you need to, right? Like, you need to have that conversation, that communication. So my biggest aha moments are really helping people work through the aha moments that I've had. And it's not to say that I don't have my own, for certain. There's a world of information that I'm going to need to learn and pick up. But for me, that's probably the latest aha moment, is just, yep, I've been in that spot, and you have to make a change, a deliberate change if you're gonna solve those problems effectively.
And for me, it's kind of not a surprise that they mentioned the soft skills. I mean, like the bucket of the soft skills, because I have a feeling that as a leader, despite all of those books and maybe some trainings, it's all the time training on the job. Like, yeah. I don't know, with the soft skills, you need to kind of learn with the people. So like, even if you read something, even if somebody will tell you something over the training, it's still like the lessons you get from your daily job, right?
It is. And I think at a certain point, good leaders will make a conscious choice to seek out people who are really good at a skill that they're deficient in. Look, again, I was an engineer. When I came out of college, and when I went to college, one of my favorite things about my program is I had to take 3 humanities classes. That's it, right? In my mind, I don't need that crap. I don't need communications. I don't need any of that stuff. I want to be an engineer, and coming out, doing it. And then just realizing, especially coming to that first role, like, oh, the way that I communicate, my communication style is awful, right? My management style is awful. And it should be, right? I've never been a manager. So, it's something that has to be developed. But like for me, I am very lucky in that I married up. I am punching way above my belt, right, with my wife. And her development, her skill set was people management and communications and working with people. And so, I was lucky in that moving into that direction, I could start to ask her questions and develop that skill set because, I'm very comfortable saying, like, my communication skill set, a lot of my soft skills were very underdeveloped as a tactical engineer. And so moving and being successful with leading people, I had to develop those skills or I was going to fail.
That's interesting. So I had a similar story with my wife. So I think I learned from her negotiations and a lot of soft skills and empathy to people to kind of understand.
Yes, the empathy is a big piece.
Okay, so but on another hand, right, we have 2024, and all of us we have our pain points and challenges. And I'm just wondering, in your case, what do you type in the ChatGPT or Google? What kind of pain points and challenges are on your plate?
I'm probably boring in this respect because you probably hear this every day as you're talking to people. But right, Gen AI is easily the biggest challenge. It's crazy, right? We have a technology that's growing faster than any technology we've ever dealt with. And at the same time, companies are looking at what they can do with Gen AI and just trying to figure things out. And a lot of it is, hey, we think it'll do this, we think it'll do that. Everybody and their mother now has a chat bot that does something, right? But it can do so much more. But there's so many areas around it. Information security, actually developing metrics and ROI to show that it is an effective tool. When I came on at Source, there was a AI ML proof of concept that was just kind of kicking off, and asking very basic questions around the project. Things of, okay, what are we trying to solve? We're trying to reduce man hours. Great. Okay, well, what does that look like now? Well, we don't measure that. Oh, okay. Well, if you don't measure it, how are you going to know if you improved it? We don't know. All right. So, but a lot of companies that I talk with are going through these same pain points of, we have this amazing tool. Everybody tells us it's amazing. And we know we have to do something with it, but they don't know what, right? And it's, it's very different than, you think about, like, I'm old enough to remember when, Microsoft Word and Excel became really big, or, things like Outlook became really big, or Gmail came on the scene, or Google Search. These had very clear use cases, and they've developed and evolved, but someone could pick it up and you could explain it. Man, trying to explain things like ChatGPT to a lot of people, out in just the general industries and the business environment, again, they know it's important, but a lot of people are struggling to figure out, okay, how do I actually make it have a positive ROI on my business? And it's tough. It's tough. It's a very nascent technology that, it changes radically and super fast.
Yeah, it's a lot of R&D, right? And proof of concepts.
Yes, it's a lot of proof of concepts. But again, it goes back to, I think people are used to proof of concept projects where, especially in small, medium business, some of that is gut decision. It's like, yeah, I think this is going to improve it. You put it in there, you maybe do some back of the napkin math, and you say, yes, we got some efficiency gain, and this was the right way to go. This one, it's tough because it's a lot more expensive to do the proof of concepts. You need people who are very new and they have an interest in things, but they're not necessarily going to have a lot of experience. I was chatting with someone and they were asking my opinion on if they were going to hire someone for like an AI ML role. They sent me over their job rec spec sheet, and it was stuff like 5 years experience in ChatGPT and this and that. It's like, that stuff hasn't been around that long. You're never going to find that. And if you do, stay away from that person because, they're blowing smoke up your booty.
Hey, that's really interesting because it reminds me, when I was starting with my my company in Poland, that we said, like, we want to focus on JavaScript, right? And back then, the React was as a front end in that framework. It was really fresh and new, right? And we were starting playing a lot of it, implementing on a different kind of for the different businesses. But the thing was, it was always funny for me because it's the same thing that we were saying. The people were asking, hey, we want somebody with React, but somebody with 5 or 8 years experience. And I'm saying like, hey, man, this is like 2 years on the market. So like, how come? How can we do it, you know?
It's funny you bring up React. I remember the same thing with React. Like when it came on the scene, people were super excited about what you could do about it. And, you know, I'd go through job postings. People would ask me to review a posting for their company if I was consulting with them. And all the time it'd be that HR like, yeah, we're looking for someone senior. So we want you to have 5+ years of experience in React. It's, hey, guys, this has been out for 2 years. You're not going to find this, right? So you need to temper your expectations and understand what you're getting into with the new technology. And AI, machine learning, not so much, but I think AI has become this general term for like automated data science, generative AI. It's this amorphous blob now that people think about. But the things that they think about when they think AI, yeah, they just haven't been around that long. You know, I don't know what to tell people.
Another interesting topic, because I know you have a lot of interest in the AI area. So I'm just wondering, what is your view here? So like my bet for the future is, I think we'll do more software and faster. So we can start faster to deliver. We can optimize the processes. You still need the experienced people to do it, right? And I compare it to the music industry or creating the music, because I like to create music and produce. So yesterday I saw some AI kind of algorithms and like applications. So you can generate whatever music you want in whatever style, and it sounds like perfectly crafted, right? But I think it's a good point to start, and you can play with the stuff really fast and create some kind of sketches based on which you will create the music. Because this is how the modern songwriting is being done. So they cut like a part of the Michael Jackson Thriller, right? And they want to create something simple, similar, and they are doing this for years. So they put the part, and based on that, they build kind of the music. So the same I can like see in the music industry today and in software development. But I don't know, like, what is your view here? Maybe you see it differently.
I think when it comes to using AI in software development, I think you're going to see a bell curve. There are, I think, a lot of junior developers or people who are not developers, but they see like, oh, this tool can help me write some basic stuff. The problem is the output that you get now is still pretty basic, and you're not solving any novel problem with that basic stuff. So I think you're going to see people on that side of the bell curve using it a lot and putting out, frankly, a lot of garbage, right? Like, because they're going to put something out and then they have to tweak it, but they don't have the skill set to actually tweak it. And so you're just going to end up in that repetitive nature. When you hit the top of the bell curve, I think you're going to end up with those mid-level developers who they're good developers. Okay, now they're starting to use some of these tools to act as almost like an automated paired programmer, doing bug remediation, some of these items, like giving them ideas. So it's going to make them faster there. And then I think at a certain point, I don't know that we're seeing this yet, but you're going to see really senior developers, to your point, who they understand the specificity and some of the gotchas in software development, the very small underlying pieces that take a piece of code from good to great. And they're going to be able to start to use things like ChatGPT, GitHub's Copilot, those items, to ramp up the speed of how they develop, right? Like, hey, give me a stub of this, and then they're going to be able to quickly add to it. And so I don't know that we're seeing that as much yet, but I think we are, as the technology develops a little bit, and senior developers are going to start to buy into this, or mid-level developers are going to move into that senior developer position where they can do some of that. Things like architecture. I've played around with ChatGPT and I've said, okay, I want to I want to test like what can it do, what can it architect. I mean, it's not there, right? It's not creating things. It's really, if I tell it something, it's spitting out generalities, or it's telling me what I told it in a different way, right? But as it improves, and I think as these mid-level developers move to senior and senior kind of take this on, you're going to see quick ramping of good software because they can pair it with, hey, give me 80% and I'm going to fill in 20%.
It reminds me like a picture, I don't know if you've seen it, from Amazon warehouse, where you have this humanoid kind of like a suit, so you can carry like a heavy objects, right? So it's like being a developer on steroids, something like this, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I think, the good developers, I know sometimes technical people, engineers, IT can be a little persnickety sometimes on things that they feel like might be taking their job. But when you learn to work in unison with it, I mean, you can get some great economies of scale. Like you said, I think we're a lot further out on the smaller end where you have people who aren't developers or they're just new to it and they're trying to use this to like, oh, I can just tell it kind of what I want and it's going to build what, like you're going to ask it for a box. It's going to build you a very basic box. I think a lot of those people are going to get frustrated because they actually want some customization. They want some specificity, and they're not going to be able to marry that with their skill set where it is right now.
And Jason, I have the last question that I wanted to ask you. It's about any like books, resources, conferences, I don't know, podcasts that have been particularly influential on you, change your mindset maybe in something, and that you could recommend.
Sure. Well, I'd say conference-wise, and it was the first year that it happened, so we'll see how it goes, but I did attend the Microsoft Fabric conference. We were looking at utilizing Fabric. We already are very heavily in the Microsoft stack, and we want to level up our data analytics, our business intelligence, and the way that we do that. And I was blown away with some of the stuff that Microsoft is doing. We all hate subscriptions, we hate monthly fees and all that, but what they've put together and the resources that they've put behind Microsoft Fabric, and now on their kind of data governance side with Purview and those areas, it's cool. It is really starting to level up the analysts, the data people that I work with. And it is going to, I've always been a little hesitant around the idea of a data citizen. I feel like there's a lot of challenges around that concept. A lot of guardrails have to be put in place. This is going to help a lot of companies put those guardrails in place and make people effective at data, which I think is exciting. So conference-wise, I was blown away. I really enjoyed it. I got a lot out of it. So I would highly recommend that one. And it's still small enough where you can have really good conversations with product owners, product developers, VPs at Microsoft, things of that nature. Book-wise, if you're looking to go into leadership, I don't know if I've come across a book that is specific where I would say this is a great book specifically for a technical leader and not necessarily other leaders. I think if you're going to be a leader, you have to apply your domain knowledge to whatever the leadership pathway is that you are. But I know like Your Next 5 Moves by Patrick Bet-David and Principles by Ray Dalio. Those are ones that I reread. I'm really passionate about talent development and team development, and you have got to be transparent. You've got to have a process where you feel comfortable having good and difficult conversations with your team. The people that hold that back and don't have those conversations, I think they really lose out on developing where the people that kind of come up to them or report up to them can develop into, and they lose out on raising all those boats. So, those are the things I'd recommend.
Awesome. And Jason, thank you so much for all the insights, for all the book recommendation and conference. I think you are the first one who recommended the conference. I always mentioning the conference, but nobody could recommend me any. So thanks for that.
Oh, sure.
I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
No, this was great, Matt. Yeah. Appreciate the conversation. Glad you reached out. I'm always happy to chat this stuff and, share the wealth, share the knowledge.
Follow Matt on LinkedIn and subscribe to the Better Tech Leadership newsletter.